I'm here with Kalpana Berman, Principal Product Director at Nike. She has previous experience at Intel, where she started out in marketing before working her way up to Senior Product Manager. At Nike, she works on tactical, agile execution for multiple omni-channel products, and we are so lucky to have her here. Kalpana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's jump right in. I want to start by asking you, were you always interested in tech or product, or was there something in particular that sort of sparked that interest in you?
I would say I've always been interested in tech. I think when I was little, so both my parents are actually electrical engineers, and they both were engineers growing up. And I still remember when my dad brought his first computer home, and I remember playing around with DOS and all the actual floppy disks, etc. And that pretty much sparked my interest in tech. So I knew I wanted to be in that realm. And then I actually was an engineer for a few years in the chip world. And product, I think like many of us, we veered towards it. And I absolutely love it now.
Yeah, many paths lead to product, as we say.
Exactly.
So I noticed when I was looking at the experiences that you've had in the past, I noticed that at Intel you actually began in marketing rather than product, and that seems like a very common transition for people to make. Was it like a direct transition for you, like straight from marketing to product, sorry, or was it more of like a squiggly line to get from A to B?
A squiggly line. And I wasn't, well, so I'll tell you a little bit about my career path at Intel.
Yes,
So I started out as an engineering, as I said, in product development. And then I actually joined a sales and marketing rotation program, and tried different assignments, mostly in marketing, actually. And it was product marketing, which is very close to product management. And after that, I landed in a role called strategic planning at Intel, which is a little bit of a blend of both worlds. It's a blend of marketing and product, but basically that role is defining and doing research on what features you want to build. But because the hardware product lifecycle is so long, you're looking 5 years ahead and not necessarily involved at all in the execution. And after that, it took me directly to what I would say is a more traditional software product role.
Mm-hmm. So your skills that you picked up when you were working as an engineer and then in this like marketing rotational program, are there any specific skills that you picked up there that are especially useful as a product manager?
Yeah, I think both sides help a lot in the product management area. From a marketing point of view, I would say you're really focused on the consumer and the customer, right? Your whole goal in product marketing, although it varies by company, is looking at what people want, how they're using your product, if it's pre-launch, what they want out of your product, and positioning it, informing a value prop about it. So you have, I would say, a lot of deep customer and consumer empathy, which is a huge skill needed in product management. And then the other half in product management is on the execution and working with engineering on actually creating and fulfilling that vision value prop. And I think obviously having an engineering degree helps in many realms. Although mine was electrical, so nothing to do with software, but I think thinking logistically, learning how people in that group work, being on the other side of the coin of receiving requirements, all that I think has helped me greatly in a product management role now.
Okay, great. And I also noticed that correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was at Intel, you were actually working with virtual reality, like VR technology. And I just wanted to ask what that was like. Did it come with any sort of really challenges that were unique to VR? Could you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yes, definitely a lot of unique challenges, and I loved it. So we were working on virtual reality as part of Intel Sports. So how to engage in sports in an immersive way through VR. And I would say lots of unique challenges. Number one, I mean, this is a completely new way of interacting with data or engaging with data or entertaining yourself. You're dealing with a 360-degree space now, not just this
Yeah.
limited screen. So everything is new, honestly, like even the simple media player. What's the best way to where do you put the field of depth and the play button? So I think all the interactions and figuring them out was really fun and unique in a 360 space. And there wasn't a lot of examples. I mean, there are games and things out there, but obviously nothing in the realm of like the mobile app space. And then obviously you're dealing with a lot of technical challenges from a hardware perspective. So you're always, not always limited, but it forms a big part of like your design considerations as you're building the products. And then finally, you're dealing with something that not everybody has. Obviously, it's a device that I'd say hasn't taken off yet, but I fully believe in the future. And there's only certain populations that have it now. And so one of the biggest tasks or discussions we had was who we're targeting and who is that person that actually has a VR device and why do they have it and what do they use it for? And designing specifically for them, which is a very, very, very tiny market versus the future potential of it, I would say. But yeah, lots of really fun, unique challenges in the VR space.
What do you obviously no one can see into the future, especially this year. But what do you see as being the future for VR? Because I remember when smartphones first came out and it was like, oh my God, like you touch a screen and stuff happens. That's wild. And now you see like 6-year-olds walking around with iPhones and it's pretty common. Do you sort of see that in the future for VR, where it will just become part of like the average, relatively comfortably well-off person's, like, will it be part of their daily life?
I think eventually, yes. And I guess I'll muddle the term VR and AR a little bit. I don't think the completely occluded headset obviously makes it impossible for you to have it in your 100% of your life.
Yeah.
But I do 100% believe there will be some kind of augmented reality / virtual reality device that allows you to kind of overlay digital objects in your everyday space without having a screen. And I 100% think that'll be there in the future. I think it'll start in kind of niche applications and industries, enterprise and other industrial activities, et cetera. Gaming, obviously. But I believe in it. I think there's a lot of fun things happening in that hardware and software space.
Yeah, I have to say the first time I tried VR, I giggled like a child, and there's a very embarrassing video of me somewhere with this VR headset on, playing this like sea monster game and just laughing my heart out. So I'm with you on that. I fully believe in the future of VR. I think it's going to be great fun.
Awesome.
So enough about me anyway, sorry. I wanted to dive into your work at Nike. So not so much I think in the product space, most people would be aware of the digital component of Nike, but when the average person in the street hears Nike, they might think shoes or athletes. Like those are the words that jump out. So how would you summarize your product team's mission at Nike? Like, what is that digital component?
Yeah, I think from a broader Nike perspective, I would say Nike Digital has a couple parts. So one is obviously we're a commerce company,
Yeah.
its core. So getting the best products for you in a very personalized way, in the way that you want it, via all your digital channels. But then the second is we are about making connections with consumers and giving people access to sport. And so my product team's vision specifically is I have several products and they have slightly different goals, but I would say overall we're trying to form deep connections with members through personalized experiences. So for example, one of the things I manage is called Nike Experiences. And our whole goal is to give people access to sport that don't have access to sport. So we provide workouts or classes or even sessions with coaches and trainers for people who, for whatever reason, either are intimidated to go try it, or where money is an issue, or where frankly, like your culture doesn't emphasize sport. We are collaborating with marketing and across Nike to basically break that barrier, because we've we truly believe sport for people is a good thing. And there's a huge role that Nike Digital plays there with the way that we bring that to life with consumers.
So when we're talking about like trying to make something more accessible to people, what does the research look like? Like, how do you go about the user research and trying to figure out who are the people that sport needs to be made accessible for?
Yeah, and I think great question. So we've discovered through research and various research. So there's a lot of, we've partnered with different cities to do, like, for example, really wide surveys across populations, Gen Z, up, et cetera, on participation in sport first, like who is participating in it, and second, why not? We've done a lot of focus groups everywhere. And I think obviously one of the big things is it varies widely depending on what city or community you're from. A person who's not doing sport in New York City in general has a very different reason why a person is not doing sport in East LA or in Mexico City or in Tokyo. Sometimes it's space. That's what we discovered in, like, New York, time and space. And others, for example, the Hispanic culture, which I actually grew up in too, there's not a lot of emphasis on sport, unfortunately, for the majority. And so breaking that barrier and actually influencing parents of kids to know that sport is good. But yeah, research, basically the same way everybody else would do research, I guess. Heavy, quantitative, large scale surveys, getting deep with customers in terms of focus groups. Luckily, Nike, through our NRC and NTC apps, we actually do have kind of data on what people are doing and how often. And so we also talk to those users. I think that's kind of the basis of where we started. And then we started honing in on certain demographics where we see, unfortunately, that participation in sports actually been going down in the last 15 years instead of increasing.
And yet the sales of athleisure are skyrocketing.
Athleisure is going up, but between
not that criticism.
Yeah, if you're under 24, you are way less likely to be participating in sport than you would have 10 years ago. And we see that even more in girls. They drop off. Maybe you started out in sports, but as soon as you hit high school, for some reason or other, you drop all the sports, or the majority do. And I think there's so many things that's great for that sports brings in your life, and at Nike we're just trying to reinstill that notion.
Yeah, I was just wondering, have you seen, I don't know if it's a product that you're directly involved in, but have you seen that more people have been, thinking specifically of the Nike Run app and the Nike Fitness app, have you seen like an uptick in downloads in 2020 where more people are like, well, I can't go to a party, I'm going to take up running or take up yoga? I imagine it's been great for you guys.
Yes, quite a bit. So both our Nike Training Club and Nike Running Club apps have seen an explosion in growth in both users and growth. And now we're basically focused on how do we retain those users, right? As life transitions to what was previously normal. But yeah, we've seen an explosion not only in the NTC and NRC apps, but in our digital sales too. So we've had triple growth, pretty much triple or double growth globally during this pandemic. So yes, so our growth goals have been met, I would say that, but now focusing on retention and what else can we provide with consumers? What are they looking for, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. So if there was someone out there who was working, I'm thinking specifically of product, of course, but if there was someone who specifically wanted to work for Nike, they've got a few years in product and they're thinking Nike does everything that I love, that's where I want to be. Are there any particular skills that you would suggest they build upon, or does it really depend on which specific product manager job they're going for?
Yeah, I would say depends specifically on the job, but also, I think the broad fundamental skills in product management, the ability to prioritize, the ability to work well with stakeholders and cross-functional teams, set goals and metrics and work towards them kind of applies on Nike. I would say how Nike differs is that you're collaborating and doing a lot with the brand and the marketing. People buy Nike not just for its innovative products, but for what it represents. And I think the ability to listen to input from brand and marketing and kind of outside your very, very traditional stakeholders is really important, particularly at Nike, and understanding kind of what we're about at the larger level is pretty different than a tech company, right? At the core, where we are here to provide people with, apparel and shoes and do their best to participate in sport, which is a different mission, I guess.
Yeah, the mission and the vision. And I
Yeah.
imagine the culture must be like so important.
It is. It plays a big role in general. I would say the culture, it's permeated across the culture in Nike in a way that I haven't seen in my previous companies or internships or anything. It's part of your everyday culture to breathe, live sport. Pretty great place to work in that sense.
It sounds great. So yeah, just while we're on the topic of your everyday, it's this question gets a very different answer to what it got like 6 or 7 months ago. But if there is such a thing as a typical day-to-day for you, what does that look like at the moment?
Yeah, at the moment, very different, as you said. Well, I would say typically my day is still full of meetings, so that hasn't changed. They're just virtual.
And it's
Very little time for individual work. But I would say almost on a daily basis, I have checkpoints with engineering on either one or some of our products. I meet with somebody on my team to check in on progress or areas that they're working on. I am also very closely aligned with marketing on a bunch of my projects. So we have like working team meetings on what's coming up next, etc. I'd say when I have like individual time on a typical day, I'm looking at data and our portfolio as a whole. So what's our roadmap looking like? What is our products? Are we doing the right things based on kind of how we've been tracking and then evolving kind of our business models as we go forward? That's actually what I was doing yesterday for a good part of the day. And then because we are in the moment that we're in, I have 2 kids, and one is just started virtual kindergarten. So in between in my meetings and days, I will rush over to check in that she is on the Zoom call or doing whatever it is and giving them quick hugs, etc. So kids is very much kind of part of the 24-hour day now versus the mornings and evenings. But yeah, I would say my typical day really runs from trying to call in to stand up. I don't always to have progress checkpoints, and then meeting with various stakeholder groups and looking at how our products are performing and trying to go swivel. That's what my typical day looks like.
Great. So while I have you here as someone who's sort of been there, done that in product, I'd love to ask you some of the questions that the people in our community are sort of always asking, always looking for these answers. One of the things I noticed that you've done a lot of is you've had to work with a lot of different cross-functional teams, especially you just mentioned in your day-to-day. How are you able to sort of translate everyone's needs and opinions across those divides? Because someone who works in marketing might not have any idea what the engineers are talking about. So is it, are you as a product person, are you the person who acts as translator between those teams?
Yes, I would say that's very much our role, right? It is your job not to just create the product and ensure its success externally to your consumers, but internally within the company. And I think some of the key things, at least that I've seen work, is to be proactive about communication and transparency. So have active updates on what your team is doing, why we chose to do what we're doing, publish your metrics widely, not just to, your VP and your little siloed group, but widely to people in the company. They should care. It takes every group to launch and have a successful product. And so having them understand it and love it is key. So I think really proactive, I would say communication, and then being empathetic and transparent to who you're talking to. So understanding where marketing is coming from and what their goals are, and and if you're relaying news on, well, we're working on this and we can't do this this for you, explain why. Like, hey, take a look at everything else we have. Do you feel like the priority should change? This is what our assessment is. And 99% of the time, once they look at everything you're doing, they're like, oh, okay, never mind, fine. I wouldn't make that trade-off. So I think just shining a light, they have no idea, for example, what development's working on or what other things and inputs you're getting. So I just say, be transparent, be communicative, and be empathetic on what those other teams' goals are, sales and marketing and brand and engineering might have differing goals. So communicating what you want to do, keeping track of it in a place that they can always check in instead of relying on meetings or emails would be a couple tips.
I think that's, well, both excellent tips. Another question that we get a lot is people who are interested in tech, which I think is sort of a prerequisite if you want to work in product, but they might not necessarily have a CS degree or a very deeply technical background. I know that a lot of different companies handle sort of the tech knowledge of their employees very differently, where some say, just, if you have all of the right skills, come and then you'll learn the technology on the job. Others require a CS degree. What's it like at Nike? Do you have like very strict prerequisites for the technical knowledge in your applicants?
We don't. We don't have strict technical requirements, and actually kind of believe with that personally. I think your aptitude to learn and your desire and passion to learn those technical skills is more important. I do think you need some technical knowledge to be more successful as a product manager, but honestly, that changes depending on the product. You can't be an expert on AI or VR or data or everything at once. And so I think your ability and your passion to learn is way more important than degree that you got or didn't get in 10 years ago or whatever it is. So I think the soft skills and your aptitude and communication, ability to learn is way more important. I personally hired people without technical degrees, and they've done great. they have a passion to learn. So
yeah, I think that's really reassuring for the people who sort of discovered what they wanted to do in life a little bit later than when they were 16 or 18 years old, which I imagine is like the vast majority.
Most of us, exactly.
Yeah. So what are some of the other things that as you have hired, and a lot of our listeners are people who are hoping to get hired, what are some of the things that really stand out to you in an applicant? What are some of the things that you really like to see?
I think number one is passion. Anything, and you can demonstrate that in several ways. It could have been a side project, or it could be just the way you talk about your previous experiences. I think being in product is a little relentless, frankly, and so you really have to have passion about both the function and the thing that you're creating or working on. I think number two is communication. Because by nature you're working with a lot of groups, it's really important to be able to translate. You could be genius, but like translate those desires and visions and things that you want to do across to all the groups that it requires to make that vision a reality. And then I would say, just personally, the people that I've kind of enjoyed working with the most in terms of colleagues or even applicants are honest and direct and transparent. It's very easy to work with people like that. That's my style too, to address kind of issues head on, I would say. But yeah, I would say those are probably the top three, frankly, in my head when I look at things that stand out in an applicant.
That's great. And I think those are all things that are very achievable for the vast majority of people. And I think it's one of the things that makes product so accessible, is that it's mostly human skills. And if you're just a good person to work with, you can pick up the product specific skills along the way. We're coming to the end of our time now, and I always like to end on a positive note. So I just wanted to ask you what's something that you're excited for in the future? Could be anything.
Oh, well, I'm excited for vaccines that everyone believes on to come out so that we can go back to the real world. I miss going to work. My kids miss going to school. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about the NBA playoffs. Miami Heat fan here. Still love the sports world. Yeah, and I'm excited for some of the products that hopefully consumers will be seeing a lot more of in the spring. So I will reach out back, hopefully maybe do another podcast about that. But yeah, those are some of the things I'm excited about.
Great. As a downloader of all the apps that Nike has ever done, I am going to put that in my calendar. Okay, so I have, well, before I finish with this last question, I just want to thank you so much for coming here today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I think this has been great, and everyone's going to learn a lot. So take a second to think about the answer to this question if you like. Everyone has to. It's a bit of a doozy. What's the greatest lesson product management has ever taught you?
Okay, yeah.
That's the response I always get to that.
Good question. I would say the ability to prioritize, because I think that's something that you need in your everyday life, I would say. The ability to juggle things at work has probably made me really, or not stressed about, I would say. I don't know if I'm good at it, but it leaves me not stressed at all about prioritizing the things at home. I think now, particularly in these times, everyone's juggling, a lot of things. It could be your health of loved ones, could be your kids, your work. Perhaps you're picking up more work because others can't in your company. And so I think the ability to prioritize what's important for you personally, and being able to juggle that every day, that's a lesson I took straight out of product management, being pretty analytical about it, frankly, like sitting down and really thinking about what is it that I want in my life? What is important? What do I care about if I look 5 years from now and say, like, I dropped the ball on this, or I did drop the ball on that, and which one would be okay, right? I think to me, that's probably the biggest lesson that I've gotten out of product management.